now joined by ESPN College Basketball Analyst. College game day, of course, was in Waco on Monday for Baylor's win against Kansas. Jay Bilas. Jay, as always, thanks for your time. Do you feel like this year in college basketball it's similar to last year where maybe 8 to 10 teams are good enough to win the national title?
Yeah, last year about this time I thought it was 8. And frankly, at this time last year, I didn't think Kansas was one of those 8. I certainly didn't think North Carolina was one. But there's still a long way to go. So, teams are going to get better. And, what they've done to this point is an indication of sort of their accomplishments, but it's not to this point, but it's not necessarily what they're capable of in the future. So I think, Kansas is better than they've showed over the last several games. I think North Carolina, again, is better than they've showed. But I don't see, I think there are a bunch of teams that can, win 4 games in a particular bracket and make a Final Four. But winning 6 is a different deal. And so I still think there are only 8 or 9 teams that I would project to be able to do that. But again, it's still early. There's a long way to go. And some of these teams have new pieces, and they're not freshman new pieces. So, with older players in some of these spots, I think they can make some bigger jumps.
Baylor was in an 0-3, I guess, gutter, really, in the Big 12, which is hard to come back from it. They've won 5 in a row, and including Monday night. They have Alabama, then Texas coming up. That won't be easy, but nothing in the conference is easy. From what you saw Monday night, what do they need to do better moving forward?
I think the key for Baylor is going to be continue to improve on the defensive end. I mean, I think they have shown that they can be a good defensive team, but it hasn't been a strength. And in years past, it's been a strength. And it's been something that you talked about first. How are you going to get the ball up against, Davion Mitchell or something like that, and Jared Butler, and how are you going to score? And, this year, teams can punch back. But because Baylor is so proficient on the offensive end, they've got so many guards that can get their own shot. Putting points on the board isn't the issue. It's can you defend and rebound at a high level in this super physical conference, and just at large in college basketball, it's just ridiculously physical. So you got to be able to match that physicality, especially on the defensive. Is
the Big 12 just like a battering ram?
There's no bottom to the league that I can see. I know that Texas Tech hasn't been playing well. They're still capable. Most other leagues that I see have teams at the bottom of the league that are kind of a layup win. And it doesn't mean that you can't lose if you play horribly, but you have to play horribly. And, if you play well, you're going to win. But the Big 12 has, I'd say 8 of the 10 teams, maybe even 9. If you don't play well, you're not going to win. And that's and when you catch teams is important too. You might catch a team coming off road games and all that, but it seems like, every game somebody's lining up, desperate and angry after a loss or two when they played pretty well. And there's really nowhere that I can see in the league where you get healthy. If you're an ACC team, you play Louisville, you're going to win. You play Boston College, you're probably going to win. But in the Big 12, that's not the case.
Does that also make what Scott did while the schedule was going and you don't have many practices, as you well know as a former player, in between games, to go from 0-3 to 5-3? How difficult can that be?
Sometimes it's better when you don't practice.
Okay.
You go from game to game. The more time you have to practice, sometimes the more times the coaches have to beat you up. And I know Scott doesn't do that, but you can dread practice when you're in a losing skid. So it's nice to get out and play. That's why for me, the best time as a player, the best time of year was always the ACC tournament because the coaches couldn't overload you during it because they didn't want to wear you out. And it's oddly enough, we played better.
TCU is obviously a dynamic with what they've done with Jamie Dixon, hammered Kansas over the weekend, and are putting up big numbers. But in order, how would you describe these stories as maybe the best? Jerome Tang at Kansas State, what Iowa State's doing with TJ, and also Rodney Terry, how he's kept Texas not just afloat, but actually continuing to succeed.
I don't know. It depends on what your sensibilities are. I mean, obviously in Waco, Jerome Tang and Kansas State are going to be the lead story because of how well you know Jerome and the job that he's done there. and with some new pieces and then some older pieces that I didn't anticipate Marquise Noel being this good this year. I mean, I watched him play, and I wasn't projecting him to be a 20-point-a-game guy that was going to be so dynamic. I knew TCU was going to be good. I just didn't think they would be as fast-paced as they are. They get up and down the floor a lot better than they did last year. And, they're one of the quicker tempos in the league. And, I think they're top 50 in the country in tempo. And that's a departure for Jamie Dixon. He's not always been more of a fast break oriented guy. It's not like they turned him down, but they weren't pushing it after makes like they do now. So he's taken advantage of the team speed. Texas obviously, unfortunate situation, but they got players, man. So, it's nice that for Rodney that it's been somewhat seamless and those guys are staying focused, but they're an older team, and you expect that with an older team.
Jay, the way that college basketball, I know there are times that the game changes. Is it still a guard-oriented team that wins the title? No, Baycott at North Carolina. Kansas doesn't have that big man this year. Is it still whoever has the guards wins?
No, you have to have good guard play, but balanced teams win. And, when was the last time we said, boy, that team full of good guards and lousy big men won the championship? It doesn't happen. And you have to have a good roster overall in order to win. And, you may have teams that only go 7 deep that can do it, but you're going to have to be able to score and guard in the post and protect the rim. And obviously you're going to have capable guards, but you saw Kansas win the national championship last year, and it was their guards weren't their leading scorers. So you certainly want good guards. I mean, I was counting Ochai Agbaji as a wing rather than a guard, but I mean, there are a lot of narratives that come out like defense wins championships, and if you can't score, you can't win either. And there's never been a shutout in basketball. So, defense is an important factor, and there aren't many lousy defensive teams that win. You can win, I think, early on in the tournament. You can have some hot guards and, make threes and win a game or two, or do maybe what St. Peter's did last year and kind of get hot, because St. Peter's didn't show that throughout the year that they were that kind of team. But they did it at the end of the year. But when they got caught playing against somebody that had real strength inside, they got blown out. And so, guards aren't the be-all and end-all. You better have both.
What are your thoughts about Houston? They've been right at the top. Obviously, had the stunning loss to Temple. People are going to have bad nights. But your thoughts about Kelvin Sampson? They've been knocking on the door, and they look like they're knocking on that door again now.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's got a great program, and they're top 10 in offense and defense. They're another, they've got another team that it gets a lot of second shots, which obviously puts their numbers up. They're not a high free throw volume team, and I tend to think that's an important factor, but they defend so well and they're so physical that, they get you playing their way at their tempo, and it's not a fast tempo, man. It's going to be a half-court game, and you're not going to score anything easy off them. They're pretty good taking care of the ball, so they don't give you a lot of runouts. They don't give you a ton of second shots. They're a good defensive rebounding team. They clean up their defensive possessions with a rebound. Their guards rebound pretty well. And they've got a legit star-caliber player in Marcus Sasser, and they've got, Jarris Walker, even though he's a freshman, he's an NBA player. And if you don't have guys that are draftable, you tend to limit your chances of winning the whole thing. I think you have to have guys that are potential pros to be there, but at least be pros or potential pros. I mean, you look back over the list of teams that win, and the NBA is a factor. But yeah, I like Houston a lot. They're they go through some offensive droughts here and there. They're not a great free throw shooting team, which is a little bit of a concern in close games. But other than that, they seem to have it all.
Well, your thoughts, and you've always been very outspoken about college athletics, that things you believe in are things that should be done differently. The NCAA, now there's all of this like NIL and transfer portal. If you were the czar, if you took over college basketball or even the NCAA if you ever wanted to, what would you do to fix what might be ailing them, if anything?
Most of the problems, the quote unquote problems that exist in college sports, are self-inflicted and imagined. And right now, they imagine that NIL is a problem or players getting money is a problem. It's not a problem. The problem is they're restricting players to just NIL. And by doing so, they're violating federal antitrust law, and they know it. That's why they hired former Governor Charlie Baker as the new president of the NCAA to replace Mark Emmert, because they want to lobby Congress for an antitrust exemption. And, they keep talking about, all these lawsuits and all that. Well, the best way to avoid lawsuits is quit violating the law. And they're violating the law, and they know it. And they're asking Congress to allow them to continue to violate the law with a special exemption, and I don't think they're going to get it. So I would just, eliminate the, quote-unquote amateurism restriction and stop all this nonsense and let the players participate in the business. And if one school doesn't want to pay players, or they want to pay them less than another school, then have at it, just like you do with coaches and administrators and employees. Not everybody pays their coach $9 million a year. Some do, but not everybody does. And we still have great competition on the field and on the floor. So this is not a big deal. And just let the schools do essentially what they want with regard to the players, just like they do what they want with facilities. They do what they want with their staffs. And I think you'll see different decisions being made. If talent acquisition now includes as a factor money, you're going to see different decisions made with money. You won't see these mega Taj Mahal facilities built. They'll still be nice, but they won't be like they have been to attract players, because they'll be able to attract them with a financial offer. And you won't see these Pentagon-sized athletic departments. Every time you turn around, you see more suits than uniforms. And it's unnecessary, but they do it because they have a lot of money to spend, and they spend it on staff rather than on players. And if you opened it up, the market would be more efficient, and you'd see spending change. And administrators don't like that, because some of their jobs might be eliminated. If the NCAA were running banks, we'd still have thousands of bank tellers instead of ATMs, and none of that makes any sense. But that's the first thing I'd do, and I think you'd see the business run more efficiently. Last
question for you. You watch college basketball quite a bit. Obviously, that's part of what you do. You love it, and you also talk about it. How often are you watching a game, or are you watching clips or things that you have at your disposal to get ready for any kind of segment you do on ESPN or any kind of game broadcast?
It's basically all I do. It's not, I don't want to say it's every waking hour, because I have to get on airplanes and rental cars and stuff like that. But, just before we got on the horn now, I was watching Kentucky. I've watched their last 3 games, and I've done the same thing with Kansas, and because I've got them this weekend. But I have the same scouting service that every NBA and college team has, called Synergy. And so I watch that all the time. And then I watch games at night, but I think it's more efficient for me to watch it where I can stop it. I can watch, the last 20 turnovers or the last 15 pull-up jumpers by Antonio Reeves or something like that. So it gives me a pretty good feel. Look, the one luxury I have in the film I watch is I don't have to stop these things. I watch it to appreciate it and do my best to try to explain it when it's necessary. But, when I was an assistant years ago, you watch film trying to figure out, okay, how do we stop this? How do we deal with this and all that stuff? I don't have to do that anymore. It's kind of nice. When Scott Drew's watching film, he's trying to figure out how do we stop it.
Mm-hmm. Jay, thanks. Great to see you on Monday night. Thanks. Good luck with the Kansas and Kentucky broadcast and also the rest of the season. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Jay Bilas, ESPN, right here on 365 Sports.
4 o'clock hour coming up.